So I recorded a version of this video once before already, so if any of that is actually usable, you might see it just suddenly spliced in. But when I was watching it back in the edit, I kind of thought, I could have put this better. So on Sunday, I put out a video about how low, just no prep, improv style gaming is the way I like to go and why I don't quite understand the opposition to that. I tend to get very positive responses. People are happy for me to talk about a different style of gameplay, and also people that work in the same way that I do are excited to see somebody talking about it without disparaging it, as a lot of GM advice tends to be around running the game in a particular way, prepping, not anti-fudging, just not being creative. Basically, it's a very anti-creative kind of mindset, particularly amongst the D&D community, who feel that the game should be treated more like a war game than it should be like a creative exercise, which is how I like to treat it. But that video was at least partly inspired by G&D's latest video, or one of her latest videos, which talked about running D&D in a castle and how she kind of overthought the process and had a bit of an anxiety/panic attack about running that game, as she was a relatively inexperienced dungeon master at the time. I don't want to talk about how D&D in a castle apparently prioritised hiring recognisable YouTubers with no oversight instead of hiring mostly professional game masters in their several thousand pound ticketed event. That's not what I want to talk about, but apparently that's what they did. But I like Ginny D a lot. I think her channel's really interesting and she has a lot of good opinions, and it would be very hypocritical of me to suggest that playing lots of D&D makes you a better games master, when I in fact think the exact opposite of that playing lots of D&D makes you a worse game master, because D&D instills a lot of bad habits. So I'm not saying that by any level that those people ran worse games than other people might have. I'm just saying it's very curious when a ticket price is that high that they opted to treat it that way. But what actually caught my interest about the video is that when she discussed playtesting the module that she was going to run at the castle, she playtested the game she was going to run in that professional environment of D&D at a castle. And that just struck me as such a fundamentally bizarre thing to do. Now, I get that it's a professional environment, but I've run D&D professionally as well as other games, and it would never have occurred to me to test what I had prepared. Not that I would have anything particularly prepared anyway, but it would never occur to me to test a game concept before it going live. That is odd. Now, I am a game designer. We have our first big box board game currently in pre-launch on Kickstarter at the moment. You can find the link below. I've invented mega games, a mega game at least has then been run, and then I've created content. I've worked on web series. I've worked on films. I am a creative person. I understand the value of testing that material. That all needed testing, extensive play testing, is very key and important to those things, as well as shopping around, getting feedback before you go to product, as it were. And D&D Castle was a professional environment. Players, like I say, were paying thousands of pounds to go to this place and play D&D in this setting. So the pressure was on, and it was a unique circumstance. But nonetheless, I just think that the game deserves the spontaneity. Now, you can watch my previous video where I talk about how I think the game should be a spontaneous and unique creative process, essentially a writing exercise, and the DM should be involved in that. The DM shouldn't have to have the story laid out and just let the players sort of tear it apart. I think that if it suits the DM style, they should be also part of that improvisational process that the players are doing. Again, watch the previous video, I won't waffle on about that here. And I want to make it clear that I do understand some of the counter arguments. So the idea that it is more relaxing to have your game prepped, to have the game ready to go, you're just going to sort of show it to players, have done all that work in advance. I get why that is easier to do. You've still got that creative love that's gone into the game, and then you're just sort of showing it to the players, and they are doing their thing however I don't necessarily think that railroading your players is bad, as long as they are able to affect the outcome of what's going on. If it's a set series of events are going to happen and the players have just kind of got to survive it, or just kind of figure out which side of it they want to be on at the end, I don't think that's as bad as some people would say. Bad railroading is when the outcomes are predetermined, so success or failure. The players have to succeed or have to fail for the next part of your story to work, and you just massage them in that direction. That's obviously bad. Also talking about, right, I understand why why having that pre-laid out and pre-prepared is a comforting, makes running the game easier. The problem is, of course, that I would get bored. I would have something laid out and prepared. I would either get bored of it, or the players would spark a new piece of inspiration and I would scrap everything I was doing and just go off in the other direction. So prep sort of becomes a bit pointless for me. I ran a very complex underground city attached to it, which was above a dungeon, in my Monday night D&D game, and I mapped that all out and I programmed it into Roll20s with sightlines and dynamic lighting and all these sorts of things. I programmed it out. It was really fun doing that, and I had all my encounters set up, and it took 3 or 4, maybe more sessions for the players to get through this multi-layer dungeon, about 3 layers of dungeon effectively. There was a top layer, and then there was this underground city, and then there was the dungeon that was in that city. And I was so bored running that. No offense to my players at all. It's nothing about you at all. It's just that I had it all laid out, and it was so many weeks and sessions of material laid out that I couldn't deviate from that much. I did deviate from it a little bit. I threw little bits in here and there, but it was all somewhat pre-programmed. And it's the only time I've ever run an extensive dungeon in that game, or in any D&D game, because it just took so long. And it was, once it had started, if I could have given it to somebody else and they could have run it, I'd have been okay with that. But the fact that I was running this thing, that I'd already done the interesting part in making it, running it was not interesting. So yeah, it was just an odd situation for me, where I'd done the fun part and now I was sort of doing the boring part. I also understand that dice are exciting. Dice determining your outcomes. You don't know what's going to happen. It's exciting to be like, oh my god, will this crazy plan work? Or oh my god, will we fail at this very crucial moment? I understand that. However, there are too many dice rolls in D&D. Not everything needs to have a chance of failure, and not everything deserves a chance of success. It is way too much, and again, it's just not that interesting. And as a player, I often find it kind of like, well, if I, particularly in like a combat situation, if something I've set up and tried to do just fails, I'm like, well, I just wasted my time, and I just, that's just not that interesting to me. But again, I understand the gambling of it. That I understand that, and definitely in my games, some good dice rolls or some bad dice rolls have determined the next layer of the story. But just the idea that you can utterly fail and even die just based on dice rolls is I don't get it. So I understand those things, they just don't appeal to me. The things I would like to actively argue against, however, is the idea that the narrative systems that I run that encourage the players to contribute to world building, to contribute to lore, to contribute to the larger creation of the game, what are normally the GM's purview, that those are immersion breaking, I think is a absurd assertion. I've said in previous videos that people need to stop pretending to be so precious about their immersion, because you are not fully immersed. Not even Critical Role are fully immersed all the time in their game. Your immersion lasts for maybe 10 minutes before someone makes a dirty joke, or you decide you want to order some pizza, or you've got to go to the toilet, or just something breaks the meta of the game, as it were. And in some way your immersion is broken just by the process of you not actually being in that world, not actually being those people, and mostly you just wanting to goof around with your friends, which I think is really the fun part. It's a social activity. We want to goof around. Most of us are not there to put on a show or put on a play, as it were, or live perform our characters. Most of us aren't there to do that. We're just there because we want to play the game and have some fun and improvise our way around a story in ways that video games and other media don't allow us to do. And the idea that engaging with the game world and engaging with the mechanics of the game in a different way would break your immersion, so playing the game will break your immersion, is just very silly. I don't understand the thought process there. If the game facilitates it and allows it and it makes sense, like the thing I always say is that you can fill in world building and lore in a way that makes sense to your character. So a cleric can pontificate about the establishment of the gods. If a established thief can talk about how the thieves guild kind of runs its wares. You can talk about your character's hometown. You should know the layout of your character's hometown, and the local area. You should have some understanding of the world your character was born into and existed in and grew up into. They should understand things. So you should be able to pontificate on the things that your character logically would know. You can't create bigger story. You can't create, there's certain things that are only the GM can do. The GM can dictate the machinations of the world, the governments of the mechanics of its world, of the larger logic. But your character should be able to explore and create things that logically they should know. And like I say, I just can't comprehend the argument that that's immersion breaking, that it's immersion breaking to engage with the game, to be playing the game is somehow breaking your immersion. No, it isn't. And my argument would be that that person is just being lazy. They're just a lazy player who doesn't want to contribute. Now, you should never be forced to contribute in this way. You should never be forced to play the game. If you don't have an idea, you don't, under pressure, GM shouldn't be poking you and saying, tell me this, create this, what does your church look like? It shouldn't be forcing you to contribute if you don't want to, or if you just can't think of something. That's a lot of pressure, and the game shouldn't be pressure, it should be fun. So what the GM should be doing, if I had any advice in this regard, is prompting questions, giving this spark of inspiration by prompting it with questions, which I like that a lot of systems do anyway. A lot of systems sort of build their way off of questions. We played a Candela Obscura one shot, which is on this channel and is available on my Twitch still probably as well. But we played it live on Twitch, and we did character creation episode, and we did the actual one shot. Which the concept I based off of a Simpsons episode, which was a weird place to start. But yeah, I really liked that the Candela Obscura has a questionnaire section as to how you build your characters' backstories and how each character relates to each other. And I thought it was a really interesting. There's a lot of really interesting prompts in there, and it was quite extensive. And I thought that I always think that's a really interesting game mechanic, to have questions that build your character. So asking players questions and getting a singular answer is much easier than just saying, tell me this. Is just like make something up. Leading your players with questions in that world building, I think, is a very strong way to go, and I applaud any game that adopts that kind of design. I'm trying to make lots of videos this September, so if you think there's anything I said there that's worthy of more thought, or if you have any questions or thoughts of your own, you pop them in the comments, and I'll spark maybe another video later down the road where I explore something in a little bit more detail. I'm going to be doing a Fate video soon, to coincide with the launch of the first series of Fate that we recorded. I'm also going to probably do some more improv type talks and things like that. But yeah, anything that any thoughts that I've sparked, please do let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching. We've got a Ko-Fi support page if you want to, also a Ko-Fi support page, that's how it's supposed to be said, in the links below. If you want to buy us a cup of coffee, everything goes towards supporting this channel. My first Kickstarter is down there as well. There'll be some tickets to the next mega game are going up soon, so they may very well be in the description below as well, so keep an eye out for that. What else have I got? I've got a link tree down there. I've got my Discord. Just basically just all a bunch of links down below. Thank you for watching. Please do like and subscribe. Check out my other videos that may be popping up around my face now. Click that like button. Click that subscribe button. Click that bell if you want to be notified. I guess that's what notifications for. I don't know if that's good or not. These things at the end always get really rambly. I don't know why I don't have like a set script of things I'm supposed to say. It really would be a time saver. The end.